past, maybe I would say, just if you look at the four walls of the classroom, that space I would say is becoming a little obsolete now. Because more or less what they do is they operate on the system of cells and bells. Because a child, when he or she comes to the school in the traditional environment, they are in the four walls of the classroom pretty much between, let's say, 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. And student autonomy is not more or less what is talked about here. Whereas what we are trying to do is provide a voice for our children. So while most schools, even today, are designed for a lecture-based format, which is a model which has been around for centuries and 100+ years. But what we would like to say is teacher lecture is not just the format in which a child learns. Also, a child wears many hats, right? Every child doesn't sort of is not very pervious to a lecture-based format teaching, and which is why the environment needs to change. Because a very small percentage of students are benefiting from this traditional mode of teaching. If there is flexibility and agility provided within the furniture arrangements or within the spaces, we see that the format changes very quickly. And despite knowledge and access to various modes of teaching, maybe there are challenges, some of them which you can see on the screen. Maybe these are infrastructure challenges, spaces which may not be flexible, but we do need spaces for collaboration for teachers and students. And how do we do that? Even in an existing environment, there are some design interventions which would allow us to tackle these issues. So if I may generalize, you and I mostly went to schools which where, teacher-centered learning was the prime mode of learning and teaching. And while we believe that students learn in that format, on the screen, what I'm highlighting is there are 10 or 20 other ways in which children are prone to learning, be it peer tutoring or independent study. Post-COVID days, of course, we are very used to distant learning, internet-based research. Not just that, presentations, research-based, learning from nature. Someone in the past talked about, outdoor environments and landscaping areas, highly important to provide access for children because these automatically end up becoming outdoor classrooms or outdoor areas for learning. And children being children, because they're very pervious to the environment, we would like to highlight that environments do play a very important role in shaping how children are learning. So mainly, what we are trying to say that we need a shift away from teacher-centered learning to something which all of us believe needs to be student-centered learning. Anywhere, anytime, student-owned learning. And some ways in the past, how we have tried to maybe bridge the gap between the teaching and the learning spectrums. I'm going to show you some examples of how this can be done. So on the left-hand side, what you're seeing are the bars which need to relate to the space planning. And on the left-hand side, what you're seeing is a sort of what a traditional school would look like, because it is teacher directed, there is isolated content, it is very knowledge focused as against hands-on learning. And it is very classroom based as against what I started saying, it needs to be sort of a community based, or children need to think and learn beyond the four walls of the classroom. So as you see the dashed line, as it starts shifting towards the right, we are creating a more conducive environment for student-centered learning. So we are very used to seeing this diagram where it's a central corridor flanked by classrooms on either side. There's a teacher's desk and children come and go 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. pretty much in this space. What we are seeing is these are the traditional layouts which most of us are used to. However, what happens here is students may not have too much of a voice and they end up becoming passive listeners as against active partakers in the whole system. By moving certain areas of what the space planning is, if you look at the diagram, what we have tried to do here is provide a little bit of collaboration between these classrooms. So instead of having 4 walls, let's say these classrooms have 3 walls now, automatically there is a bit of collaboration between these two rooms. And teacher desks sort of moved from the corner towards the center. So students feel a little more comfortable, teachers are accessible to them. What happens is the bar is shifting and we are going more towards student-centered spaces. If you look at shared rooms plus classrooms, so mind you, all these floor plans are the same. These were basically rooms on either side. We are just trying to open up the floor plan to make it a little more collaborative and flexible. What happens in this one is you have now pairs of classrooms which are shared. So these are 2 pairs on either side. Sorry, 1 pair on either side. Instead of a central staff room, we have a teacher workspace or a teacher collaboration room out there. It is also a strategic position of the teachers being there because they have eyes on the classroom and the breakout areas, and it always enables passive supervision in that case. And then we have smaller breakout areas. So you see how the bar has already started shifting for more student-centric experience. And the final one, where more or less you do have classrooms for formal instruction, but what we have also realized that because learning cannot be only within the 4 walls and it needs to go beyond these, now you already start seeing connections between all these spaces. So from the learning studio, the learning suite, you have the breakout areas or the active learning commons. These could be project-based learning. From the learning commons, you have a seamless connection to the outdoors. So students can get their work outdoors. This, like I said, becomes an active outdoor learning space. And then you also have space for an active lab. So you see, suddenly, just by maneuvering certain rooms between the same space that we have or within the same envelope that we have shifted the bar from a traditional layout to something which is more of a student-centric community. And how do we do that? How do we do that when we have existing spaces, which to a large extent are challenging, but structurally and architecturally, if they are sound, it is possible to reorganize all these 4 in order to get the direction and in order to get the impact that we want for the students in the teaching and learning. This is one of the projects that we worked on in India. I'm showing you the before and after images. Before, which was a lot more of a, I would say, little chaotic, little teacher-centered areas, which then started opening up to accommodate the 21st century learning skills. We also talked about, flexible furniture and agility and how collaboration can happen within these spaces. So you're starting to see how the spaces are shifting. Highly important for teachers to collaborate also in order to work on their lesson plans, in order to decide what needs to be happening during the week. And if a conducive space or an environment is not provided for that, the system fails. So you're seeing how before and after we have tried to change that. This is a very active learning space. There was not much daylight which was coming into the space before. The artificial lighting wasn't too great. So what we did is we opened up the areas so the kids are directly able to get a view of the exterior. Vistas have been created, and you also start to see that central partition where the 2 classrooms can be combined for further collaboration and teaching. So it was a central corridor which was flanked by 2 classrooms, but that we opened it up. We actually utilized the central corridor space into the breakout area or the learning commons. Structurally, we haven't changed anything. So the envelope and the structure of the building has remained intact. This was actually a 100+ year school, which we have been renovating over the years, and this is one of the primary pods that has been completed. So another question is, how can learning spaces promote student agency, collaboration, sense of belonging, as well as you know emotional and socio-emotional learning. Um, the image credit is to collaborative for academic, social, and emotional learning, because our spaces, if they are very rigid, what we have over the years, since we, as an architectural design firm, we are specializing in the learning environment sector. Over the years, what we have also seen is rigidity is not doing too well on the emotional and the psychological impact that it has on the children. The moment you provide a bit of flexibility for children, they start thinking and acting better. But how do we do that in our schools, right? So, in terms of just the environment, learning, physical learning environment, if you divide it into sort of three sectors of what the impact is of spaces on the psychology as well as the emotions of the children, um, a lot a lot of factors play a very important role, be it daylight, acoustics, be it just vistas, every even in a work environment, every half an hour, if you're pretty much sitting next to a window which has views outside, you would see, you take a break, you look outside, you feel better about it. So question is, why do we not provide that in our schools or in the environments that we are designing for children? um, in terms of the psychological impact and emotional impact, the optimal stimulus is highly important. Too much color, as we say, is not very great, but optimal textures, colors provided in the environment do well on a child's brain, right? Um, so just in terms of how the indoor or the entry experience for a child to have, to feel welcome in the space that he or she is visiting every single day, right? Good to have the welcoming entry. We have created some congregational stairs because it's a vertical school. Some connections between the two levels. You're seeing the congregational space, which is very actively used, not just for informal learning, but they also have guest visitors who come and give lectures here, give talks. Children use that during break times. Highly active space right at the heart of the school. Um, Talking of natural light and breakout spaces, indoor outdoor connections, like we said, important to provide that in all the areas of the school. Acoustics and daylight, very important. We also recently did a school, about 25-year-old school, where the teachers came and complained that students are actually not able to grasp what the teachers are saying because acoustically there's a lot of echo in the classrooms. So all we had to do is go there, give ceilings which have some absorbent material, provide the same on the walls, and it's created a lot of difference in the ability of the children to grasp what is being taught. Physical environment, as we said, just by providing very simple connections from the indoor to the outdoor. It could be a sliding door, a folding door, but something which is seamless. So it becomes easy for children to access all the spaces. We have seen works really well. Um, and then the psychological environment in terms of how we are supporting the various modalities of learning. So if you look at the image to the right or the left, in fact, all of them, they're basically classrooms that can be connected. This have a direct connection to the outdoor learning terrace, the breakout spaces which give children ample opportunity for them to decide what they have to do within the break times. And of course, we need spaces for expression. So when we talked about the optimum stimulus, this is what we say: not too much color, enough texture for children to explore, and usability of pretty much every corner of the space as a learning experience for the children. Scale, of course, plays an important, now these are all early childhood images, but scale does play an important role when we are designing spaces. So we are working for a few schools in East Africa, and I'm going to quickly run you through some of the space plans that we have done, just to see how some of the concepts that I talked about are basically being translated into the floor plans. Um, I'll skip this. So we are working with the Aga Khan Educational Society, and what you're seeing on screen is a school, K-12 school in Nairobi. Some of the buildings here have been existing, so we are refurbishing them. Some of them are new, but more or less about a 6-acre campus, which is being renovated and built new to some extent. So the buildings here, what you're seeing on screen is an early years block, but very different from, a layout of, there are no corridors basically, so to say, in this school. You're seeing that all the learning studios pretty much are opening up into outdoor decks or courtyards. So the younger children have direct access to the outdoors. Not only that, internal courtyards have been provided for light and ventilation. And services or toilets which are grouped between these two studios provide easy access for the kids as well, right? So vertical circulation wise staircases which are going to the top floor. This is just a G+1 building. So pretty much that's what covers the entire area. Also looking into what the views from inside for the children are when they are sitting inside. So these are basically 3, 4, 5-year-olds. What we said is mm, while there are indoor-outdoor connections which have been provided seamlessly, also when they are sitting within the classroom, it's nice for them to have a view outside. So bring the sill lower such that while they are sitting on their chairs and desks, they are basically able to still get a view of the outdoors. And like we said, all the classrooms are connected to spaces which are courtyards or outdoor spaces. Just some sections that we developed. You start seeing how the staircases are built and trying to get some wind direction correctly with the sun falling through the skylights on the first floor. And little bit, so the brief was to give a bit of a playful nature to the nursery building. And that's what you're seeing on screen. For the same project, this is the secondary school building. So the primary school building is something which was going to go through a complete renovation, but by keeping the shell constant, this is something that we are adding as a new building. So if you look at the ground floor mainly has all the ground and first floor have the co-curricular activities. So if you look at the various performing arts, visual arts studios that happen on the ground floor, the whole science base on the first floor. But even there, you're trying to bridge the gap between the everyday learning that happens within their learning studios and when they transfer to these areas. So we started giving the science commons where some informal pieces of the education can happen within this commons, whereas the active hands-on activity would be in the learning labs. And then where we talked about a smaller learning community per se, where you're starting to see the learning studios here. Every community as such has been provided with at least one project lab. So let's say grade 8 is studying on the left-hand side and grade 9 on the right-hand side. Each of this has been provided with a project studio, which is like an active learning lab for them, as well as the learning commons or the breakout commons. And as we said, the teacher collab or the work collaboration area for the staff is at the center. So again, for active as well as passive supervision. Some sections of that. This is a vertical building again. On the lower ground floor, we created dining and a kitchen for them. Followed by the active learning core on the next 4 floors. And finally, the last floor has the multipurpose hall, which is a triple heighted space. This is what the So this is in design phase right now. We are working on the development, design development drawings, so to speak. Another school that we worked on, or rather working on, is in Tanzania. Similar, it's also for the Aga Khan Foundation. Similar scope where certain buildings were existing, which we are renovating, and some of them which we are building new. So you're seeing three blocks basically. The early years block, the primary and the secondary block. And then there is a separate building for the auditorium or the multipurpose hall. So mainly the sawtooth sort of formation is also, something that was existing on site, but we enhanced it in order to get more of the north light and the daylight into the building. This is the ground floor plan for the early years. There's a central largish area which can become sort of their indoor play zone, which then opens up into the courtyard. So this was the design that we started off with. And towards one side, you're seeing the KG1 community, which is the, I think, age 3 that happens here. And to the lower side, basically, you have the dining area and their common facilities. So from 2, which is the main admin area, we are funneling all the people in, and the children start using their spaces, which is the KG community. So here also what you're seeing is basically, you're having an access from these classrooms into the deck. And from the deck, they go into their active play area, which is completely outdoors. First floor for the same. So mainly 3 classrooms, which are then combined with the learning commons with their toilets, which become a smaller community for these children. Some images of what the entry area is looking like, and the sawtooth, which is the other side. Similar, so in order to maintain the design language, the similar sort of sawtooth plan that we have for the primary block. On the ground floor, we have the admin area and the some of the common functions like the dining, etc. The learning studios start happening from the second floor actually, or the first floor has all the co-curricular functions like the library, the labs, which are basically pertaining for the age group, so grades 1 to 5 for the primary school. So as you come up, as much as we could, we have tried to create, again, sort of the sense of the learning community, where you have about 3 studios combined, and you have the commons with the teachers' collab areas. And as far as possible, again, maximize on the daylight and the views for the classrooms. This is one of the views. So in your backyard, basically, we had designed the Teachers College for Kabale a few years ago. And I'm just going to quickly run you through this. The lot of the buildings here were very dilapidated, and it required structural intervention, architectural intervention. So we worked closely, with the users of the building to see what can be beefed up and how much to add here. Just basically about a 60+ acre campus where these were very old buildings. The roofs that you're seeing in white here are some of the ones where the buildings actually needed to be added, only to add capacity for the campus. The rest of them, which are gray, we said we will retain as much because they were looking pretty healthy as far as structure was concerned. So we said we'll add as much as we will retain as much as we can for these buildings, right? Just quickly run through the floor plans for this. And these were some of the proposed views, but in order to, for costing purposes, some of the exterior treatments we were not able to do, but we still maintained the overall concept of what we needed to do for the facade. Right. A brand new library building that we had to add because the library was in a very poor condition. So this is basically what we said, we can do with the building, and this is what it is looking like right now. So these are done, and phase one has been constructed. Quickly, my last project here then it comes, for all that we have talked so far, the question also comes as to really can we actually design schools without classrooms, such that the environment is basically a free environment for the children to experience. And I'm going to a project which we did in India a couple of years ago. This is an early years center on a 1.5 acre site in India, and it was very research based. We talked a lot to the parent community. We observed children at that age group. We talked a lot with the teachers and tried to see what could be the best fit for this age group between 2 to 6. And for the environment as the third teacher, we said, how can we capitalize on this by building lesser, but still providing all that the child needs as an experience for that age group. So instead of providing classrooms for like age 2, age 3, what we said is, can we actually start designing a program which responds to the theory of multiple intelligences? And we realized that, there's a lot more than just the linguistic and manipulative skills that needs to go into the building. There need to be zones for wet, messy areas. Also, the way these kids work, they need very seamless spaces to move from place to place during the few hours that they are spending in this environment. So all of these, just the high level 9 spaces have been provided to as they come together within the school. So this has been, we looked at it as a very organic form, just so that mainly no corners for the buildings, no sharp corners for the buildings as such. There is a community center right next to it, which has been designed. It was all part of the same scope. So left-hand side has the school and the right-hand side is the community center. And the central bit is basically a large covered area, which is the indoor-outdoor play area for the children, the active area for the children. It is just for about 350 or 360 students. As you can see, there are no real walls. All the space as you enter is one seamless area, but there are internal acoustic partitions that have been provided to differentiate between some of these zones. The only enclosed areas are the ones where we needed 100% acoustics, like the music room and the drama room or the theater area for these children. Again, a G+1 structure. Some of the so there are the idea also was to make it a little more playful. As soon as you enter, there are 2 large skylights on the top, which bring in a lot of sunlight. And some of the images also show how the shadow works out there and how, it's like a sense of wonder for the children. So mainly the 2 buildings which are connected in the center. Lot of active play area for the children towards the outside. Right. So as we said, really doesn't have any, what you're seeing on screen is one pod sort of which has been designed. There are no walls. So there is some manipulative activity happening with the teacher, the group of about 10 children. Acoustically, these are basically acoustic screens. The ceiling that we are seeing is also absorbent, has absorbent material. And what we have seen, we have had this question from users many times as to how do you mitigate acoustics when you give open areas. Yes, architecturally, it can be taken care of. But we have also seen that if children are engaged in activities which they like, um, the distraction factor becomes extremely less. So, like we said, let the environment, let the child experience as much as he can as part of the third teacher. This is the art area. So the material started changing here, hard flooring for wet, messy activities. Even the sinks, etc., that we have provided are child friendly. So, without too much assistance, a child is able to use the space as much as he can. This is the active Montessori zone. And what you're seeing behind is basically a teacher's pod. So it's an open pod where while teachers are working, they are also able to supervise on what is happening with the children. This is where the skylight is. There's a little bit of a storytelling area there. There's a slide which runs along the staircase and quite a hit amongst the children. So these are some images we took when if you look at how the shadow of the skylight is on the floor, and children are really enjoying what is happening within that space. The outdoor cafe, which also doubles up as an outdoor learning area for the children. Mm. Here also, if you look at the trough sinks, basically we have given two heights, one for the children, one for the teachers as well. And then they have a program where they actually have been planting their own, some vegetables, some flowering plants, and just as the educational experience, they are able to see the seed, the sown seed actually grow and bloom. So just the overall sense of what the building is. So yeah, mainly, when we are looking at children as the change makers, what really is that it's not just one agency that can bring this change. We all, as parents, teachers, facilitators, government agencies, need to come together to actually enable this change, because it really takes a village to raise a child. In the end, because it's not just the grades, but it is basically more than grades that is going to define the school system. So thank you.
Let's appreciate Mugda. Thank you so much. And again, delegates, I request that we use the online platform for any questions or comments. So, Mugda, please do stay with us in case there's any
Sure.
questions online, as I invite Professor Peter shortly. So as we set up Professor Peter, because we are now going to move into the current challenges, responding to the current challenges. I'm hoping you can use the online platform, and so we'll check. That's the, if you can have it on the screen, we'll have the QR code for you to be able to ask Mukta a quick question, if I can pick that up quickly. But as I do that, allow me introduce our next speaker, who we are now trying to set up and ensure that his PowerPoint can go on. He's the founding partner of Field and Clegg Bradley Studios, FCBS, an architectural practice based in the UK with a global reputation for social and environmental architecture. Phil has worked extensively on schools and university projects and has written about the design of educational environments. The practice has designed more than a dozen award-winning new schools in the UK and is currently completing the Aga Khan Academy in Dakar. In higher education, FCBS has worked on more than 60 universities, more than 60 universities in the UK and North America. Peter is also a professor of architecture at the University of Bath, and in 2006 he set up the Field and Foundation, which has specialized in improving the quality of schools, school designs in East Africa. And I'm glad to report that he's been to Kabale, so he knows our place very well, and I think there's a couple of people from Kabale who agree because they've met Peter here before. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome with me Professor Peter Clegg. As Peter sets up, I want to check for Mugda, because I was trying to save time and I see Meryl saying, no, she has to ask. Just making sure, Peter. Don't worry, Peter. We're just making sure we are setting you up. So I'll check if Meryl. But do we have a quick question in the room on the design? I like the architecture, and I'm glad we have the president of architect association. The quick question from the back end this side, Meryl, would be the cost of putting up such infrastructure in sub-Saharan Africa. And I'm not just speaking about Uganda. As much as we love it, we understand the cost of putting up such infrastructure. I was walking to Jennifer. I thought Jennifer had the question, but I'm just hoping. Okay. Quick question. As we check online, if there is no question, QR code is there. If you can't reach it, just walk to Meryl there, and we're able to. Frank, did you have a question? You found someone? All right. Yes. Mugda, can we have the various? Okay, that's not for Mugda. Where is the middle
Sorry.
ground here? Considering that our education budgets can't accommodate these classroom designs. Mugda, you want to?
Yes. Yeah. So, like we said, it is not. None of this is defined by the costing. For example, what we try to do in terms of just providing collaboration between the two rooms, opening up walls between that does it very easily. So we are not actually, none of this, what I talked about, has to be a very expensive solution. What we are trying to do is approach it from the space planning perspective, and it could be a clean slate like a greenfield, or it could be renovation project, but it's very easy to do it with small budgets as well.
Mugda, when shall we eliminate room from classroom?
Sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Well, it's a very interesting question here. When shall we eliminate room from classroom? We simply need class.
We still need a class. Yeah, we are looking, if I heard you correctly, what we are looking as classroom is just a small part of where the learning happens. But what we are trying to say is, let's look beyond that. It is not just the four walls, but it is the entire environment of the community of the school where learning needs to happen, and which is why we have to activate spaces within that learning environment.
All right.
I don't know if I answered that correctly or if I heard you correctly, but yeah. So
What is the average space per pupil per pupil student or the student space ratio? What's the average space?
right. So in order for, let's say typically we have, classrooms which take about 25 students. On an average, if we have to look at flexibility and collaborative layouts, about 550 to 600 square feet is what we look at for a classroom.
All right. Any question in the room? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Morris, and thank you for the presentation. I see a lot of designers, a lot of people who construct here, and my point of view is from use. And I saw a space there, and I have 2 points of reflection. One of them is the fact that all our institutions right now in Uganda are challenged with numbers. When you don't find numbers in a school in Uganda, it's because there is a fee tag to it. And so people are trying so hard to get where they do not have to pay. How do we address that issue in terms of designing for use by the learners? And then the other reflection point I have is actually related to the pedagogic aspect, which we try to encourage when we are constructing. What actually can that space that has been designed or constructed provide? Thinking, learning, sort of trying to split, to create a space where you can do both the theoretical and the practical. Because now what we do is to construct, say, a skills lab in one space, such that after we do the theory, then you go into the practical space. How do we bring those two spaces together such that they speak to each other? Sometimes it requires technology, but how practically, how we try to cater for that in view of the reflections shared.
just to add on to that, what I've also seen in other schools, and this is really smart on them, and I really appreciate that, is that the classroom, which is now, we want to move the room to class, has become multi-usable. So you'll find after the class,